Okay, so we are back. Can everyone see me?
Yes, Robert, you are visible, yes.
Okay. So now let's see if it works now.
Yes, it's working.
Okay,
Excellent.
Here we go, everyone, finally.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah, it was just stuck for some reason, but I've heard people say that this sort of thing happens all the
It
time.
does. You did
So what I
great.
need to do, Sarah, is I have you in there now. So let's okay. So if everyone, without any further ado, I am happy to say that I have it, Dressed in Black remix.
I am Robert Harnett, a man dressed in black. The story you're about to see is one of many who are dressed in black. It displays our disruption from the homeland to a place we now call home. It illustrates the endurance of a people and how we are steady rising to the top. We are the people who are
dressed in black. Dressed in black.
We are the originals from the motherland. The ancient name of our homeland is Alkebulan, now known as Africa, and they were
dressed in black. Dressed in black.
Alkebulan is the oldest word of indigenous origin, used by Moors, Nubians, Nomadians, Kohatians, and Ethiopians, and they were
dressed in black. Dressed in black.
We are as colorful as the rainbow, black, purple, brown, beige, yellow, and red. But we are still
dressed in black. Dressed in black.
We are descendants of kings, queens, warriors, and dreamers, contributing to the world's history, but often denied, all because we are
dressed in black.
At times recognized, but often abused, accused, or refused, all because we are
dressed in black.
From the beginning of humankind unto the end of all times, our presence will be all because we are
dressed in black. Dressed in black. Dressed in black. Dressed in black. Dressed in black.
This is where the journey begins for those dressed in black. Since ancient time, Alkebulan has been a land of great natural resources and beauty. Africa, as it is known now,
is the world's second largest landmass. It covers 6% of the Earth's total surface area, and 20% of it is land. Some of the most exotic existence can be found here, such as animals, waterfalls, plants, instruments for music and dance, herbs for food, and healing and makeup. Alkebulan.
Before imperialism, Africa was a very diverse land with hundreds of languages and cultures. Societies ranged from centralized government states, village communities, to nomadic hunter and gathering societies. Communalism was an accepted practice. Land was held commonly and could not be bought or sold, although other things, such as cattle, was traded, and the chiefs ran the daily affairs of the tribe together with one or more councils. The African communities also favored the use of storytelling within their societies. Stories were told and handed down throughout generations in verbal forms. History, however, would have us to believe that Africa was a dark, undeveloped, and unsophisticated continent, and that the arrival of the Europeans is what caused it to become civilized. But there were several pre-colonial African inventions. Most of them date back to ancient times. You may be aware of the modern intervention by black inventors such as Louis Latimer that invented the light bulb filament, or the discovery of the peanut or soybean by George Washington Carver, or the development of the first traffic signal, sewing machine, and gas mask by Garrett Morgan. But long before them, the discovery of the fire can be dated back to 1.4 million years ago in the South African caves. Yam cultivation and hence farming began between the years 8000 and 3000 BC. Yams were first cultivated in West African and New Guinea. Iron was first smelt in furnaces around 450 BC in Nigeria by the people of the Nok culture in West Africa. Glass tools used for shaving were discovered in 2000 AD, made from volcanic glass found along the African Njoro River. So as you can see, they were long since civilized.
In spite of all the natural wonder of Alkebulan, things were about to change dramatically. Slave traders from North America, seeking to create an economic engine from the use of no-cost labor, were sailing to what would now be called Africa. This misuse of human potential created one of the greatest wealths for slave owners, particularly in southern states. In the 300 years between the 1500s and the end of the slave trade in 1860, at least 12 million Alkebulans were forcibly taken to the Americas, the largest forced migration in human history, relocated some 50 ethnic and linguistic groups. European vessels took goods to Africa, where in some cases they would trade them for slaves. The average journey on the slave ships were approximately 4 to 6 months in terrible conditions, naked and lying in filth. A 250,000 were from Angola and an equal percent from Senegamia. 50% entered through the port city of Charleston, South Carolina. Once landing into ports, there was the need for clothing, because there was little to no clothing on the slave ships. Clothing for men was generally made of onyx bird, made from flax or hemp, or unbleached coarse linen. By the 19th century, with the rise of the cotton production, blends such as jeans clothes became more of a common use for the slaves. The majority of the slaves wore plain, unbleached, sturdy leather, shoes without buckles. Workers usually received most, if not all, of their clothing as an allowance from their owner. Former slave Lewis Hughes recalls in his memoir that the male field worker held on the Mississippi plantation were given 2 shirts, 2 pair of summer and winter pants, a coat, hat, and a pair of shoes for winter. The women were given 2 summer dresses and at least 1 winter dress. Women also received a pair of winter shoes and a cloth for a turban. And the enterprising women made pantalettes from cast-off men's trousers, tied on or above the knee to protect their legs. Many of brave Alkebulans never gave up the thought of being free, and one such person was Gordon Peters. He was sometimes known as Whip Peters. He was an enslaved African American who escaped from a Louisiana plantation in March of 1863. Gaining his freedom when he reached a Union camp near Baton Rouge. In order to hide the scent of his body from the bloodhounds that were chasing him, Gordon took onions from his plantation. After crossing each creek or swamp, he'd rub his body with onions in order to hide his scent from the dogs that were chasing him. Gordon fled over 40 miles in the course of 10 days before reaching the Union soldiers. He became known as the subject of photographs documenting the extensive scarring of his back from whippings received in slavery. These photographs were distributed throughout the United States and internationally to show the abuse that slaves sometimes received. Gordon went on to serve in the army, where he fought bravely as a soldier in the Corps d'Afrique during the siege of Port Hudson in May of 1863. It was the first time that African American soldiers played a leading role in an assault. Ladies and gentlemen, the spirit of Gordon Peters.
I am a man. I am a man with stars and stripes whipped on his back. I have been scorned and abused to no end, all because of the skin I'm in. Though I work hard for you each and every day, towing your fields, doing everything you say, I get no respect, not even no pay. I will be free, I will be free, I say. Just you wait and see. For there's nothing you can do that can break my spirit. For I am strong like the mighty giant oak tree. And just like the mighty oak tree, I will produce a many acorns who will someday be born to freedom without bearing this storm.
A change was truly on its way due to the Underground Railroad. Many notable participants, such as Harriet Tubman, who made over 19 trips into the South and escorted over 300 slaves to freedom. John Fairchild, in Ohio, the son of a slave-holding family, made many daring rescues. And Levi Coffin, a Quaker who assisted more than 3,000 slaves to freedom. Estimates vary widely, but at least 30,000 slaves and potentially more than 100,000 escaped to Canada via the Underground Railroad. The largest group settled in the Upper Canada, now known as Ontario. Numerous Black Canadian communities developed in southern Ontario. Those in Canada typically came from the American colonies, as no shiploads of human shuttle went to Canada directly from Africa. A word from Harriet Tubman.
I was born in 1820 in Dorchester County, Maryland. My parents, Ben Rose and Harriet Green, named me Araminta Minty Ross. I was born into slavery. In 1844, I married a free black man, John Tubman. But my status as a slave did not change until I moved to the free state of Pennsylvania in 1849. When I gained my freedom, I changed my name to Harriet to honor my mother, and I became Harriet Tubman. My husband John did not make the journey with me, and eventually he remarried. I follow my calling. I returned to Maryland many times to rescue both family and non-family members from the bondages of slavery. Moses, that's what they call me, Moses, like the prophet in the Bible. For like him, I led my people to freedom for the next decade, and in all my journeys, I never lost a single passenger.
Reverend Josiah Henson also came to Canada through the Underground Railroad, crossing the Niagara River into Upper Canada. He was an author and abolitionist, born into slavery. But in 1830, along with his wife and 4 children, Henson purchased 200 acres in Don Township to build a self-sufficient community for fugitives from slavery. The site, found in 1841, takes its name from Harriet Beecher Stowe, successful 1852 anti-slavery novel Uncle Tom's Cabin, featuring a character named Tom, loosely based on Josiah Henson. Although the plight for freedom was a mere dream for many dressed in black, there was a man named Matthew DaCosta who was recorded as the first free black person to arrive in Canada. DaCosta was a member of the exploring party of Pierre Dugagnier, Sieur Thimonts, and Samuel de Champlain that traveled from France to the New World in the early 17th century. He arrived to the land on July the 1st, 1867, that would become Canada. There is little documentation about Matthew DaCosta, but he was thought to be of African Portuguese ancestry. He is known to have been a freeman favored by explorers for his multilingual talents. Numerous mixed-race African Portuguese persons were part of the Atlantic Creole generation, often working as sailors and interpreters. His portfolio of languages is thought to have included Dutch, English, French, Portuguese, Mikowa, and Pidgin Basque, the dialect many Aborigines used for trading purposes. In 1916, the Great Migration, sometimes known as the Great Northward Migration or Black Migration, was the movement of 6 million African Americans out of the rural South to the urban Northeast, Midwest, or West that occurred between 1916 and 1970. The first large waves of blacks to go to British Columbia was invited by Sir James Douglas, governor of Vancouver Island in 1858. Douglas, the son of an African Creole mother and a European father, he was the first governor of the colony of British Columbia. He was sensitive to the concerns of African Americans in California. The spirit of Sir James Douglas.
Sir James Douglas is my name, born in 1803 in Demerara, later a part of Guyana, to John Douglas, a Scottish planter and merchant from Glasgow, and Martha Ann Ritchie, who was Barbadian Creole. My mum was classified as a free colored, which in that time meant someone of mixed African and European history who was not a slave. At the age of 16, I began my work for the Northwest Company as a Canadian fur trader, and then at the Hudson's Bay Company, becoming a high-ranking officer. I later became a politician who was the first governor of the colony of British Columbia from 1858 to 1864. I am often credited as being the father of British Columbia. My wife was Amelia, whose mother, Mionipi, was Cree. Although I had many accomplishments, one was envisioning British Columbia as a place of tolerance for Black and First Nations people. But then, the settlers came, and they had totally different ideas. In 1858, I heard from a ship captain who sailed between San Francisco and Victoria about the racist policies in California and the disenchantment of many black Americans living there. I invited Mifflin Wistar Gibbs, a black attorney and judge, to visit Victoria, offering fair treatment to him and all those who followed. Gibbs eventually led hundreds of black Americans to a peaceful life in Victoria based on my invitation, of which I was very proud. About 400 to 600 black Californian families moved primarily to Victoria or Salt Spring Island, establishing themselves before the start of the gold rush. Their presence helped to increase the number of those who could be counted upon to support this British territory if the Americans tried to claim the land.
My name is Sylvia Starks. I was born in 1839 in Clay County, Missouri, the youngest of 3 children of Hannah and Howard Estes. Married to Lewis Stark, a farmer. Faced with educational and other social barriers in California, we joined a group of people and left for Canada for the 1858 BC Gold Rush, thanks to Governor Sir James Douglas. I was in every way a true pioneer. As living legend on Salt Spring Island, we lived in an area that was then a wilderness, isolated from other settlers. We established a farm, grew vegetables, and raised chickens. 2 small, beautiful children, Emma Arabella and Willis Otis. The smallpox epidemic of 1862 went on to raise 7 children. After my husband died mysteriously, we moved the family to Cedar, British Columbia, just outside Nanaimo. Home on Salt Spring kept calling me. I returned to the farm in 1944 at the good old age of 106.
Hello, I'm Joe Fortes, the city's first official lifeguard. I was born in Port-au-Prince, Trinidad, 1862. But you know, some sources believe I was born in Barbados. I will leave that up to you to ponder. I was often referred to as Seraphim Fortes in the ship's logs because I was always in the right place to help to rescue someone. I arrived in Burrard Inlet in September 1865. My first job was a shoe black. What would you say today? A shoe shine guy. Then I got a job at the Sunnyside Hotel as a porter. Man, was that grand. I liked that job. But then the Great Fire happened and burned down much of Vancouver. But I was able to help a married woman and her son to safety aboard my old ship anchored in the harbor. I also salvaged much of the hotel guests' luggage before the building was consumed. Man, I love devoting much of my free time to teaching children to swim and patrolling the beach. I remember in 1898 rescuing J.G. McCook, an American consulate at Dawson City, who suffered an attack in the water while visiting the city. No one ever appointed me to be the lifeguard in the beginning. I just saw a need, and I did it. I supported myself by working odd jobs until in 1900, the city appointed me as its first official lifeguard. My contemporaries referred to me respectfully and lovingly as Old Black Joe or English Bay Joe. I just love being a friend and leader to the children, a guard for the bathers, and a person who helped those in distress. I am officially credited with saving 29 lives, but between you and me, the number is really a whole lot more. But don't tell anyone, right?
There is much to be said about the endurance and spirit of those that immigrated from San Francisco, the Caribbean, Europe, and other countries. It was as if they could hear the voice of Canada calling, "Come to me, all ye who are in need, the true north strong and free. And although I am not perfect, we stand on guard for thee." Many continue to come, and one such person was Mary Ann Shadd Carey, was the first woman to become a publisher in Canada. She arrived in the country escaping to freedom via the Underground Railroad and devoted herself to teaching the children of former slaves arriving in Canada. She later returned to the United States and was active in the women's suffrage movement. Shadd founded and edited the Provincial Freeman in 1853 and ran a racially integrated school for Black refugees in Windsor, Ontario. Shadd advocated strongly for school desegregation, worked to encourage Black Americans to move to Canada, and was one of the first Black women to complete a law degree after moving back to the U.S. during the Civil War. Carey died in 1893 at the age of 69. There were others that created a legacy for Black Canadians to follow, and at the forefront was Black women like Viola Davis Desmond, Portia White, and Reverend Addie Ailstock. Viola Davis Desmond was at the center of one of Nova Scotia's most controversial episodes. In 1946, she refused to sit in the balcony of the Roseland Theatre in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia, and sat on the floor reserved exclusively for white people instead. She was arrested and found guilty of not paying the full tax on the floor seat ticket. She was jailed and fined. Portia White was an acclaimed concert singer and performed concerts across Canada, the U.S., and Central and South America. She performed for the Queen at Charlottetown's Confederation Center in 1964. The first Black woman was ordained in this country later than you might think. It was Mabel Adeline Addie Ailstock, ordained in the British Methodist Episcopal Church in 1951, and the first woman ordained in that church after they changed the rules earlier that year. Reverend Addie Ailstock worked in congregations in Ontario, Quebec, and Nova Scotia throughout her career. Nova Scotia's Carrie Best was a poet, writer, journalist, and activist. She founded the Clarion, the province's first Black-owned and published newspaper in Nova Scotia in 1946, and in 1952 she began hosting the Quiet Corner radio program, which would run for 12 years. Best was made an officer in the Order of Canada in 1979. She spent her lifetime fighting racism. She died in 2001.
Thornton and Lucy Blackburn were slaves in the United States who first escaped their Kentucky owner and settled in Detroit. Then they had to escape a second time to Canada. After their owner tracked them down into Detroit and attempted to re-enslave them, which caused the Blackburn riots in Detroit 1833. The Thorntons were allowed to stay in Canada after the court system refused to extradite them to the United States. This was seen nationally and internationally as a symbol of Canada's role as a safe haven for Black refugees. Then there was Elijah McCoy. Elijah McCoy was born to George McCoy and Mildred Goins, former slaves escaped from the United States to Canada. Elijah was considered a young genius and was sent to study mechanical engineering in Scotland. He became known for inventing a device that lubricated a train's moving parts while the train was in motion. He had 50 patents, and is also credited with inventing the portable ironing board. And a new idiom was created from his name, the real McCoy. McCoy died in 1929 at the age of 86. And how about these guys? William Hall, Richard Pierpont, John Ware, and James Meek. William Hall was the first black person to receive the Victoria Cross. He was born in Nova Scotia to former slaves who left the United States because of the War of 1812. He became a sailor in his 20s, and eventually, joining the Royal Navy, he was awarded the Victoria Cross after securing a British garrison in Lucknow, India, while serving on HMS Shannon. Hall was one of 2 sailors to survive the attack, but was the only one able to continue to fight. He fought until the garrison was safe. Hall died in 1904 at the age of 77. Richard Pierpont. Richard Pierpont was sold into slavery in 1760 at the age of 16. He took his surname from an English officer whom he served. Pierpont was freed after the American Revolution began and served as a soldier on the British side. Afterwards, he settled in Niagara region and suggested the formation of an all-black militia that would fight with the British during the War of 1812. Pierpont retired to his farm in Garafraxa, Ontario, and died there in 1839. John Ware was before John Wayne. John Ware was John Wayne before John Wayne. John Ware was a former slave who settled in Alberta and gained recognition for his skill as a cowboy. John Ware was born a slave on a cotton plantation and apparently grew up on a small ranch in northern Texas, although the historical record of his life is far from clear. He gained his freedom at the close of the American Civil War around 1865 and drifted west, eventually settling in Alberta, where he would start his own ranch. He entered many cowboy competitions and won most. He established 2 ranches before his death in 1905 by his horse tumbling on him. His funeral was the largest that folks had ever seen, coming from everywhere. He was considered a legend then and now. James Meek, the subject of the television movie Captain Hart, starring Lou Gossett Jr. James Meek was the son of Johann Herkimer's slave named Meek. He became a millionaire and had a hotel, livery, and coach service in Toronto. He transported goods between Toronto and Kingston. The Meeks had a daughter named Mary, and as it was customary to offer a dowry for a daughter, James offered a large dowry for his daughter's hand and was accepted by William Johnson. He married Mary and took her on a honeymoon to the United States. After the wedding, Johnson revealed himself to be a slave trader and sold Mary into slavery on a Virginia tobacco plantation. In the fictional movie, Meek pretended to be his wife's slave, traveled to the American South, and successfully rescued Mary and several other slaves. But some say that the archives revealed that it is more likely that he got the British government officials to buy her back and return her home.
Now let's review the black athletes of Canada, starting with George Dixon. George was born July 29, 1870, in Effreville, located in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. It was a small community of predominantly black Canadians. He died in January 6, 1908 in New York. George was the first black world champion in boxing history and the first Canadian to ever win a world championship. However, he died in poverty from alcoholism at the age of 37. John Armstrong Howard, known as Army Howard, was a Canadian track and field athlete. He was the first black Olympic athlete from Canada, competing in the 1912 Summer Olympics. Howard was born in the United States, but came to Winnipeg in 1907 with his father. Rapid Ray Lewis was a Hamilton track and field athlete who made history in August 1932 when he became the first Canadian-born black athlete to win an Olympic medal. He won bronze as a part of the 4x400 meter relay team at the Games in Los Angeles. He graduated from Hamilton Central College in the late 1920s. Later in life, he received many accolades, including an Order of Canada in 2001. In 2005, a school in Hamilton was named after him. Sam was also born in Nova Scotia and moved to the United States as a teenager. He was highly touted heavyweight boxer, although discriminatory policies prevented him from being allowed to contend for championship. Langford continued to box even after an injury led to the loss of his sight in his right eye. He died at the age of 72. Willie O'Ree. Fredericton-born Willie O'Ree was the first black player in the National Hockey League. O'Ree made his debut with the Boston Bruins in 1957-58 season. O'Ree later played in the Western Hockey League before retiring in 1979. Donovan Bailey. Donovan was born in Jamaica and immigrated to Canada as a teenager. He was one of the country's most highly decorated track athletes and once held the world record for the 100-meter sprint. He won 3 world championships combined in the 100 meters and the 4x100 meter relay, and 2 gold medals at the 1996 Olympic. Ferguson Arthur Jenkins, often called Fergie. Fergie Arthur Jenkins is one of Canada's most celebrated baseball players. Jenkins, who played for the Philadelphia Phillies and the Chicago Cubs, was inducted to the National Baseball Hall of Fame in 1991. Bruni Surin. Bruni captured a gold medal in the 4x100 meter relay in 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta. Surin, who retired after competing for 17 years, now runs the Bruni Surin Foundation. Bruni now lives in Montreal. Harry Jerome was a Canadian track and field athlete who went to the Olympics 3 times, winning a bronze in the 100-meter race in 1964. He also won the gold at the Commonwealth Games and Pan American Games, and set or matched several world records. Jerome received a bachelor's degree in physical education from the University of Oregon in 1974, and taught with the Richmond School Board, and then with the Vancouver School Board in 1965 to 1968. And last but not least, there was Angela James. Angela was a hockey player, born December the 22nd, 1964 in Toronto, Ontario. She was known as the Wayne Gretzky of women hockey. Angela was a pioneering and dominant force in women's hockey during the 1980 and 1990. James led the Canadian women hockey team to 4 world champions, 1990, 92, 94, and 1997. She was also one of the first 3 women to be inducted into the International Ice Hockey Federation Hall of Fame. Let's review the women trailblazers in politics, starting with Rosemary Brown. Rosemary had to deal with racism and sexism on her path to becoming both the first black female member of a provincial legislature and the first woman to run for leadership of a federal party. She served as a member of the British Columbia Legislature Assembly for 14 years and was a candidate for the Federal Party's leadership in 1974. Brown died at the age of 72 in 2003. And then there is Ann Cools. Ann is a former member and the first black member of the Senate of Canada. As a social worker, she was a pioneer in the protection of women from domestic violence. She ran one of the first domestic nonviolence shelters in Canada. Premier Trudeau appointed her to the Senate in 1984. She switched party alliances in 2004, becoming a conservative senator. Today, she sits as an independent.
Michael Jung. She was a former CBC journalist and the first black person to serve as Canada's Governor General, a position she held between 2005 and 2010. Born in Haiti, she became the first black reporter to be featured on French television network News in Canada and went on to host her own current affairs show. After her appointment as Governor General, she used her office to emphasize freedom as a central part of Canadian identity. I know how precious that freedom is, whose ancestors were slaves. I was born into a civilization long reduced to whispers and cries of pain, she said during her installation speech.
My name is Rosemary Sadler.
Rosemary Sadler is the founder and president of the Black Canadian Network and the former president of the Ontario Black History Society, an Order of Ontario recipient and recognized expert on the history of Black Canadians. She also worked with June Augustine on the recognition of Black History Month.
Now let's review the men politicians, starting with Lincoln Alexander. Lincoln Macaulay Alexander was a Canadian lawyer who became the first black member of Parliament in the House of Commons, the first black federal cabinet minister, serving as Federal Minister of Labor, and the first black chair of the Workers' Compensation Board, and the 24th Lieutenant Governor of Ontario from 1985 to 1991. He was the first person to serve 5 terms as Chancellor of the University of Guelph from 1991 to 2007. Lincoln was also a governor of the Canada Unity Council. Senator Don Oliver. Senator Oliver is a successful civil litigator, real estate developer, and educator. He was appointed to the Senate in 1990 by Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. Oliver served in the Senate of Canada until 2013. He was the first African Canadian to have a seat in the Senate. He is also a member of the Nova Scotia Black minority. In 2006, he was named the greatest Hamiltonian of all time by readers of the Hamilton Spectator. Charles Roach. Charles immigrated to Canada and became a noted civil rights lawyer and activist. He represented the Black Panthers and American Conscientious Objectors, often working pro bono. Roach went on to co-found the Black Action Defense Committee with Dudley Laws. He was an artist and musician, and a founding member of the Toronto Carabana Festival.
Why? Occupy, occupy, occupy. Today and every day, make the 1% pay. Yeah, why?
Dudley Laws. Before becoming an activist, Dudley was a former mechanic and welder. Dudley Laws was a Canadian activist who rose to prominence during the 70s and 80s as an outspoken critic of the Toronto police following the shooting of several Black men, demanding justice in protest marches with his rallying cry, "No justice, no peace." Laws co-founded the Black Action Defense Committee, an organization with similar concepts as today Black Lives Matter. His activism led to police reform and the creation of Ontario's Special Investigation Unit, an independent agency that probes situations involving civilians and the police. And last but not least, Michael Lee Chin. Michael is a Canadian businessman and philanthropist. He came to Canada from Jamaica to attend Hamilton's McMaster's University. He is an executive chairman of AIC Limited and chancellor of Wilfrid Laurier University. Let's hear a word from Michael Lee Chin.
So, good day. Albert Einstein famously said, "The eighth wonder of the world is compounding." My interpretation of that was, he wasn't necessarily referring to the compounding of money only. I interpret what he said as being a lot more general than the aforementioned. In fact, I think the essence of compounding is relevant to every aspect of life. The key is to be successful in life, one has to be purpose-driven. One has to be a disciple of something that is meaningful, that is larger than us. Because only then will we have the fuel to be creative and to persevere and hence get through that inflection point naturally. Thank you very much.
The story of being dressed in black does not stop here, for the journey has only begun. There will be others that will continually pave the way, creating more legacies for those who are dressed in black, to believe, to dream dreams, and further the plight for true, equal freedom. For we are dressed in black, dressed in black, dressed in black. Okay, everyone. I am back. So we have with us now Mr. Blue Man Kuma. I'm going to unmute. We have Mr. Gary Whitaker, officially Garfield Whitaker, but I'm a friend, so I can call him Gary. And we have, let's see here, let me get the other person on. Miss.
That's good. I'm a black man.
Let's see here. Sherry Davis, let's unmute her. So gentlemen, while I'm getting Dr. Davis on, well, Blue.
Yes.
Are you there? Okay, I
I'm
can
here.
see you there. And
can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right.
And then Gary?
Yes, I can hear you too.
Okay, sir. All right. And Dr. Davis, are you here?
Yes, I am actually. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Let's see here.
I just don't have the video feed up for some reason.
Okay, let me see here.
Still black.
Can you accommodate it in a angle?
Let's see. So Blue, I saw that you, while I'm working on getting Dr. Davis in, Blue, I saw that you had your hands up several times. Can you tell me what was going on there?
Oh man, I liked a whole lot of what was going on there. I cruise around Stanley Park on fairly a nightly basis. Just I have a coffee and I like to go sit on the point and look at the water. And I pass Harry Jerome's. I pass Harry Jerome's statue every time, and I give a big up to the brother because I love that there's a statue of him.
Yes.
I think that's a wondrous thing, man.
Well, one of the things
that's the real McCoy, just so you know.
There you go. I don't know if you guys noticed, but in that particular picture that I chose, there was lots of pictures of the statue, but for some reason, I don't know if you noticed, someone had hung a rope around that statue. Did any of you catch that?
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah. So I sort of, there's certain things that I put in there that I sort of did as a subliminal scenario, so to speak. But yeah, I put that in there, not to intimidate or to scare, but just to show how people can still be hanging on to certain things, you know.
Yeah.
So Dr. Davis is Native American. So I wanted to have someone from another perspective of indigenous origin. I know you probably don't know much about the Canadian history, but tell me your thoughts.
Oh yeah, I thought that you definitely.
You want to bring up your mic there?
Yeah, one sec.
Yeah, bring up your mic.
Bring it off the floor here.
There she is.
There we are. How's that?
That's a little better. How about trying to bring up a little bit more?
Right, let me just increase the volume here. How's that? Is that good?
Yeah, we can hear you
better. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I really love the way that you portrayed the history and you know, and the individuals as well that were very important to our history, right? And how they migrated to Canada. So that really, you know, a lot of it too that I really didn't have a lot of knowledge on. It was just a beautiful way to portray that and really see, you know, the original, you know, where they came from, you know, what their history of their population was, you know, to, you know, it kind of reminded me a lot of how
and what my indigenous people came from, a lot of similarities to that.
Right,
And,
right.
But yeah.
So, Mr.
It was a
Whitaker,
beautiful way to.
from your perspective, what did you catch in there? What's let's see, for some reason I don't have you on the screen there. Is Gary here with us?
Yes, I'm here. Did I unmute myself?
I think you had muted yourself.
Okay. What stands out in my mind with that film is the diversity of the African origin or experience in North America. It's very diverse, whether it's from the Caribbean, whether it's from the US, coming into Canada. I mean, in other words, the Canadian landscape, Black landscape, is very diverse. That's the point. Whether it's mixed race Blacks, be that Asian American, Black Asian, Canadian, Afro-Asian, like Lee Chin, or, the mulattoes,
Right.
And even I dare say that we should not forget that, and this is reaching out to my First Nation sister, Dr. Davis, that a lot of Afro Americans, if not Afro Canadians, are also mixed with indigenous blood.
That's right.
We should not ignore that.
That's right.
Because they not only before the Underground Railroad gained steam, the Blacks would run off to the tribal lands in
That's right.
Native or First Nation territories for freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And they would intermarry, procreate. And there's another aspect there are two other places that we should not forget with the Great Migration. Well, the Underground Railroad, first is Underground Railroad to the Bahamas and the Underground Railroad to Mexico.
That's right.
Those are two other destinations that we shouldn't forget.
So while you have the floor there, Gary, I want you to address the Black History Month. We're coming to today is the last official day of Black History Month.
Right.
But why don't you give a perspective on that from any angle that you so desire, whether it's personal or whether it's wherever if you can expand on that.
Well, as an educator, it gives me an opportunity to focus, because a lot of times, even though I believe in year-round teaching of any minority awareness, not necessarily Black awareness.
That's right.
Whether it's Hispanic awareness for the indigenous Hispanics, or even First Nation awareness, I think it should be ongoing. But I think Black History Month gives us a chance to reflect on inequalities and prejudices, and the struggle that we all mutually face as people of color. So I think we should all take that opportunity, not just Blacks, but people of color should latch on to the notion that we all share a common struggle for equity in this system that is highly racialized. And it gives us a chance to target. If we will be the vanguards of oppression, then we serve the function of helping others as well as ourselves to be elevated.
Excellent. Blue, you want to take it from there? And then as soon as he finished, Dr. David, you want to jump on that as well?
Yes, I would like to just say that I think we have a commonality of a lot of struggle, but we have a commonality of a lot of triumph, you see, which is what I was most enjoying in the display of the different personalities as they came through our view.
Where's my screen?
All of them achieved greatness. And there is so much of that. And also, it's very important to remember that the whole slavery thing was one episode in our travels history, but you go pre-slave and it gets ridiculous, man. I mean, our accomplishments throughout the history of this planet are the thing that will always galvanize our pride, keep us standing up tall, talking loud.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
very proud of who we are, and I know we all are. And very well done, brother. I enjoyed that presentation very much, man. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Dr. Davis, you want to conclude on that particular question?
Oh, you bet. Yeah. Yeah. What I found really, intriguing about the film as well was, from the different diversities and walk of life of the different, from indigenous African to, all the way back to, different cultures of Africa. And and like you were saying earlier, about the African people migrating with the tribes to escape slavery. I remember my grandmother talking about that when we were children, and I had a seventh generation grandfather that was half African and half Cherokee. And so his nickname was actually Jesse Bushyhead because he had big bushy hair, right? So, you know how natives are. They always come up with funny names, for whatever the idealism is. But anyway, but it was so funny. We used to, just as children, we'd laugh about that, but it was really just, what the indigenous culture names you, this is what you are. And so, but the beauty about especially Black History Month, it really brings a lot for all of us to appreciate and feel gratitude for what we have today and how far we've come as different diversities and people and African people having to go through the struggles that they did and overcome it with such great strength as a community.
John, I mean, not John, but Gary, I'd like, we had a conversation the other night, and one of the things we were talking about the struggles, but you, in concluding, you had a wise paragraph, so to speak, that you said, and it was basically about America. We were talking about so many things that we have struggles over, but you applauded America in a way, and I'd like for you to repeat that.
Yes. First of all, thank you for having me on.
Oh, absolutely.
I forgot to, and everyone else, it's good to be here with you all to share, to bond. Yes, what I was saying, and what I am still saying is that, I am an American. I am a naturalized American, originally from Jamaica, but a proud naturalized American. And although we tend to criticize the United States and we tend to bash it, I think we tend to lose sight of the fact that America is a grand experiment that should be recognized and appreciated for being a groundbreaker. It is breaking the ice that other countries have yet to break in terms of promoting racial equity. So we may look at America in a negative light close up, but if you step back and think and look at it, it's really a remarkable country because it's breaking the mold of what it means to be a nation. Mm-hmm. It's creating a new dynamic that is showing the world that a nation can have many different races and religions and creeds and origins and sexual orientations participating in an empowered way on the landscape. I mean, let's be honest. Does Canada have yet a Black prime minister in a white country? Or Britain? Or, let's be
vice
real.
president of that.
Right. So, we may have started with a black female governor general. True, that's just a start. But
right.
I think it's feeding off. I think Canada and the rest of the world is actually feeding off the dynamism that's the United States. The United States is a trendsetter. It's blazing a path that other countries look to and will look to for inspiration and guidance as far as racial equity and diversity is concerned, empowerment is concerned. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. I thought it was Blue. Go ahead.
No, I'm feeling about a second that emotion. Yeah, it hats off to them down there. It's quite a struggle. I always like to point out the fact that when I first got here to BC, the social credit was in power. They owned the place, and they ruled for quite some time. But when they fell out of favor, they really fell out. It's hard to find one or two of them in Parliament now in BC anyway, and whereas they used to rule. I think the same thing is going to happen to the GOP down there, because they're just, I'm sorry, they're lost and don't seem to have any desire to be found anytime soon. And the events of January was 1/6 on the 6th of January, when they attacked Capitol with the intention of actually harming, if not killing, some of these politicians, some of the leaders. You see, that just can't go by the wayside. That can't be tolerated. And so the country is still in a period of flux. It's growing, it's mighty, but there's the roller coaster ride going on down there. But I do appreciate what Brother said, and
Excellent.
I'll say it again, I second that emotion. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, ladies and gentlemen, and people that have viewed the film, I, as the person who put the documentary together, I appreciate your time and that you were willing to come and view it. And I got to tell you, I'm sort of glad it's over.
A lot of work, huh, brother? A lot of work.
Well, when I don't know if the vice president is on, because he was coming through someone else's link, so I won't know if he's here or not. But Don, I told Don just the other night, after I had worked so long on this thing, many of you might be too young to know these two characters, but it's Stan and Laurel, which is some comedic guys. And I said to Don, I said, Stanley, this is another fine mess you've gotten me into.
See, Blue, that's Blue. I know he's talking to you. You won't know that stuff, right?
I know all that stuff. I know that. Don't get me started. Who's on first? No, but yeah, Laurel and Hardy, man. Yeah.
That's right. You wouldn't know that stuff. That's from the 40s, Blue.
Yeah, that's right.
Dude, I'm in that industry, man. I know.
I'm just messing with you.
Now look at Gary. Don't get me started. I'm trying to tell you.
So that was a famous line that he always stated.
Yeah,
another fine mess that you've gotten me into.
Yeah.
Because Don approached me. He said, we just got to do something for this year. And I said, well, Don, we're running really late, because this was literally in December. And he says, well, can't we do something? I go, well, and I was talking to the board, and Sarah can vouch for this. I said, well, it's all, half of the thing is already done. It's only going to take me a little bit. Little did I know it was going to take me over 300 hours putting the rest of it together, because, when you're doing something like this and you're dressed in black, as the one presenting it, you have to make sure that your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted, because you're gonna be checked. And so I had to go deeper and deeper and deeper into the research to make sure that the things that I was going to put forth was really standing on solid ground from a factual standpoint. And so that's why it took me so much longer than I had anticipated. And then the editing, because as you know, the thing was pretty much an hour, which was the same as the movie Engagement, the journey part last year. But the difference was with the interaction of the people, it gave you that influx of movement and change, right? Blue, you can relate to what I'm saying. But when you're putting a documentary together, you know, just to sit there for an hour can really, you can go brain dead for a minute. So
let me just say this. Let me just say this to you. That it's time well spent, because it's a job well the hell done. Well
Thank
done,
you, sir.
Robey.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And so with that being said, normally in certain scenarios like that, I would open it up to the audience, but rather than, because it was so long, I feel that we'll probably come to the close. The last thing I'd like to do is, Sarah, would you like to close from a standpoint of Columbia Performing Arts Society, since, like I said, I don't know to unmute anyone that
I'm here.
John may be
I'm here.
on. Okay, so and that was going to be that was going to be Don's area. So could you kind of put the closure on Columbia's Performing Arts Society and thank the folks from that standpoint?
Absolutely. I'm very happy that
we've got some
each one of
feedback
you
from
made
you
it.
there.
We have a little bit of feedback here. Gary, can you mute yourself?
Yeah, I think it's Gary's. Let me see. Let me.
Okay. Okay.
Gary, if you could mute yours, that would probably.
I have muted now.
Oh, you have. Okay, there you go.
There you go. Okay, so happy to see everyone here to enjoy Rob's hard, long nights, dedication product. It is beautiful and informative, as good as the first one, only missing, as you said, that personal touch, human touch of seeing the performers live. So we are looking forward to Dressed in Black 2.1.
You want to mute yours?
And that should be next year. And now that you have all the experience already, it should be much easier. Your promise of this will only take me a few hours will probably materialize, be true. In the meantime, I encourage everyone to do his, her part in keeping our struggle alive in the small manner that we all know how to do it, forcefully, peacefully, faithfully. Thank you for being here.
So thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. And remember, whenever you see someone who I said dressed in black, well, before I even say that, the purpose of the film was to give the value, not just people as being dressed in black, but because we who have been on this planet viewing so much information in school and colleges that were not about people dressed in black, the value was not integrated within us from siblings to an adult. So the concept was to present the facts, present historic events of people that have been an intricate part of the fabric of this world. And I will continually do the things that I do that can illustrate that point, because we need to find appreciation for every human being that walks the face of this planet. And when we come to that conclusion within our spirits, within our beings, within our souls, then we can really see the results of a planet that becomes, to some degree, a utopian society. And that was the purpose of that film. And so I'd like to part with that and say, please, 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 when you recognize or when you see people of various different colors, appreciate it.
Yes.
Do not create this thing in your mind about what you've seen and or what you've heard or what you've been told. And if you do, combat that. That's the key. Combat and monitor yourself on that. So thank you very much. I appreciate your presence and your time with me here today. And I want to thank the board. I want to thank Sarah for being here to step in for the rest of the group. I want to thank Mike, who's been on the board, who is on the board. I want to thank the Vice President, Don, who probably no doubt is having trouble getting in, but we're gonna have to work with him and myself on this computer so that we can have smoother transitions. But thank you. And as I always do when I close, I wish you love, peace, and follow the way. I'm out of here.
It was an honor.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.